Greetings, 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 everybody. This is M. MZ, your boy, back again for another installment of Notes from the Art of Leadership book, co-authored by my friend and the good doctor, Taka Ma'at Kilimanjaro. And I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to read from Taka's section of the book, and it's going to be from chapter 15, Organizational Leadership. And then in chapter 15, we're going to go to page 209, Organization, and the 9 central problems and their solution. Now, number 9 to me seems to be the appropriate thing to key in on today because I have some thoughts on organizational leadership. So if you have the book, we can go to page 214 and we can read from number 9, no organization, no movement. To the extent that Africans have not developed independent professional visionaries and organizations of professionals who manage and organize the mass millennial movements to come over a protracted period of time, rudderless black mass movements could not sustain themselves and therefore could not be successful. Solution: forge organization of professional visionaries and skilled doers. And I'm going to touch on that solution part. Forge organization of professional visionaries and skilled doers. Nothing of importance has ever been won ad hocly, haphazardly, sloppily, or part-time. No complex structure, no building, no institution, nothing can be built without a plan. No social movement can be successful until the people who need the movement have defined themselves precisely just the way it is that they are fighting for, or just as it is they were fighting to get. The fact that Africans in America have not defined what must be done is indication, in fact, that they have not decided to completely break from those who have historically harmed, cheated, and discriminated against them. When one decides to break with anything harmful, it will become obvious how to leave, where to go, what must be done to get there, when and who to work with, and why. Africans in the Americas have many of the most technically trained core of African educators in the world. Surely they can put aside their petty personal issues to solve problems that are millennial in value. And I want you guys to remember that last sentence. Surely they can put aside their petty personal issues to solve problems that are millennial in value. So, where am I going with this? I have recently, I've always known about this brother, and I had just recently kind of gotten into his work. And what the catalyst of that was, somebody on Facebook had posted his book, which I had, Black Anglo-Saxons, or African Anglo-Saxons, whatever you want to call it. I think I might have the book here somewhere. The Black Anglo-Saxons. And I'm going to put that up on the screen in a minute. Nathan Hare is an interesting character, interesting man. And what I found that in 1962, when this man did his most powerful work, we're talking about what, 38, another 20, 58, what's that? Almost 55, 56 years ago, where he put together a drive, an initiative to put Africana studies in higher educational institutions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit on his bio, and I'm going to also put up the screenshot so you guys can read along with me. So Nathan Hare, April 9th, 1933 to June 10th, 2024. So he just recently passed. Was an American sociologist, activist, academic, and psychologist. In 1968, he was the first person hired to coordinate a Black Studies program in the United States. He established a program at San Francisco State University, A graduate of Langston University and the University of Chicago, he earned his doctoral degree in sociology in 1962 from the University of Chicago with a dissertation entitled The Changing Occupational Status of the Negro in the United States. And you guys should get that. It's online, it's easy to get. It's a very interesting read. He had become involved in the Black Power movement while teaching at Howard University. The university's program, African American Studies, is what it was called at the time, is still in place. It is now called Africana Studies. Professor Sharon Jones recalls being a student during the protests held on the campus, which were led by Dr. Hare alongside the Black Panthers and the Black Student Union. These protests ultimately paved the way for the Black Studies program, which is now recognized and replicated at schools across the nation. After being fired as the Black Studies program, after being fired as chair of the Black Studies program at San Francisco State in 1969, November, Hare and Robert Chrisman co-founded the journal, The Black Scholar, a journal of Black Studies and Research, of which Nathan Hare was founding publisher from 1969 to 1975. Dr. Hare said the Black Scholar was designed to unite Black intellectuals who are in their ebony towers, as he described it, in their ebony towers, with the street activists in an attempt to evolve a new and viable Black ideology. Other early members of the editorial board included Shirley Chisholm, later elected to the United States Congress, Imanu Baraka, a noted playwright, Angela Davis, scholar and activist, Dempsey Travis, Max Roach, John Oliver Killens, Ossie Davis, Shirley Graham Du Bois, Ron Karenga, and Lerone Bennett. The first issue attracted attention because of his cover design. In addition, Hare used it to promote articles and thinkers from the first Pan-African Cultural Festival in Algiers, which he had attended. He published articles from leading African intellectuals, as well as the American activist Stokely Carmichael and recently exiled Black Panther leader Eldridge Cleaver. Nathan wrote the lead article, Algiers 1969, the first Pan-African Cultural Festival, to set the tone of the journal. This article was reprinted in Abraham Chapman's New Black Voices, a 1972 paperback mentor book from the New American Library. Its title was featured on a cover that included pieces by Eldridge Cleaver, John Oliver Killens, Ernest J. Gaines, Robert Hayden, Malcolm X, Chester Himes, Imanu Amiri Baraka, Nikki Giovanni, Margaret Walker, James Baldwin, Ralph Ellison, and Ishmael Reed. The magazine published articles by many of its board members, along with articles by Eldridge Cleaver, Sekou Touré, John Conyers, and John Henrik Clark, while also providing a forum for young scholars and activists, such as Joyce Ladner and Don L. Lee. After earning his PhD in clinical psychology, Hare set up a private practice in Oakland and San Francisco. Together with his wife, Julia Hare, he founded the Black Think Tank and for several years published a periodical, Black Male-Female Relationships. He and his wife have written and published several books together on Black families and history. It is important to note, I want to make sure that I note here, that the Atlanta University Conference is held from 1898 to 1914 under the auspices of W.E.B. Du Bois, marked the inauguration of the first scientific study of the conditions of Black people that covered important aspects of life. Example, health, homes, the questions of organization, economic development, higher education, common schools, artisans, the church, crime, and suffrage. So as you can see, Nathan Hare got his inspiration from the work of W.E.B. Du Bois. His famous quote, and what I think is probably his most important quote, is, "They regard our Black children as different from white, but insist upon Black children acting and thinking as if they were white. To do this within a white framework and a white design milieu." Dr. Nathan Hare. All right. So it was important for me to read all that And this is going to be a little bit longer than I normally do, probably a little bit more than 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, 13 minutes. Hare responded to a need that developed sociologically, politically, and culturally at his time in 1962. The thing that Dr. Takal Kilimanjaro talked about was that, especially in Bach 2, is that we are going to be presented with those times, those moments in time, politically, culturally, and whatever, where it will be quite obvious that we had to make a move. We will have to be ready to make a change, revolutionary change, militarily, whatever it's going to be, whatever way that we can make that change, we have to be aware of what's going on. Today marks the time where politically and culturally, we may be at the crossroads, and all the indications, all the ducks are lining up where we may be at that time where we have to be ready. Dr. Hare had his own challenges where he got fired on a number of occasions from different scholastic institutions. He got fired from Howard University because he was just too radical for them, because he was too black. He was a true scholar, warrior scholar. During his time at Howard, he brought in Muhammad Ali to speak to the students, because at the time, this is when Ali was protesting his participation in the Vietnam War. Obviously, Dr. Hare agreed with him because of his radical, stances and positions. He got fired from Howard University. He was also, quite remarkably, he was also a professional boxer. He was also very good. I don't even think he lost a fight, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. But he had about 3 or 4 fights, and the dean asked him, either you're going to be a teacher or a fighter. You got to make your mind up. Obviously, he thought that being a teacher was going to be more important, because he wasn't going to have that kind of an impact sociologically and culturally being a fighter as he would be on the level of a higher educational institution, where he can affect many, many young people's lives and their psyches, their African psyches. Also going to San Francisco State University, what was also very, very important there, he was asked to resign. Again, the same kind of thing, where the so-called intellectuals, black Anglo-Saxons in their ebony towers. That's what he always says, that we need to get out, the black intellectual needs to get out of their ebony towers and participate and be active with the common man, the common African on the street. Our mission and our goals should be the same, but we should not be afraid. The black intellectuals, when I use the word we should not be afraid to come out of our ebony towers and mix with the common folk and be a more unified force trying to effect change. Another highlight of Dr. Hare, when I thought was very poignant, was that he, in his book, talked about black Anglo-Saxons, towing this gray area of being African and being a scholar, but what he calls that zone, that safe zone, is what he calls social accommodation, and there were social accommodationists, where he says that if a black Anglo-Saxon or a black intellectual scholar on that level in a higher institution of the educational process, they need to be separatists. All Africans need to be separatists. That means that as a separatist, you can live in this paradigm, European paradigm, and you can deal with all the political pressures and everything else that comes along with it, deal with it, understand it, navigate it, but also be African in every sense of the word. So it's important for all of us including the so-called Black Anglo-Saxons, to be separatists in this European paradigm. One of the things that concerned me, and I don't even know if the word concern is correct, but near the end of the book, he talks about some of his, observations, his concluding observations. And one of those concluding observations was that, and I agree with, technically I agree with the part about where he says that there are white people in this society who are victims of oppression as well. And to a certain degree, that's true. You know what I mean? So now we got to remember, he was living in a different kind of a world back then. It was more racist than, well, there's no such thing as more racist, less racist. But he was living in a more open racist environment at the time. However, you got to remember too that, well, let me say this. He thought that Black Anglo-Saxons could be militant when the time came, because he felt that as a separatist, when the time presented itself, that we would need to be militant in nature, and we had to be aggressively responding to our issues of oppression. And he felt as though the Black Anglo-Saxons will reach that point eventually. Now, I understand where he got that from, you know what I mean? Because at the time when he put together his paper, his publication, he had a lot of people who thought like him, felt like him, who worked with him, who wrote articles and papers for him, in his publication. And, he had, some great people back then that he was interacting with. So there was a bright light, even though it was further down the tunnel, that, you can still see the light of African intelligentsia, where maybe at some point in time, he saw that those Black intellectuals could pull the other ones, the so-called Black Anglo-Saxons, along, and we can become militant and become separatists like the rest of the population, the African population, should be. So I can see how he made that, that conclusion that Black Anglo-Saxons could get there. But here it is, 50, 60 years later, we see that that's not the case. There are plenty of Black Anglo-Saxons right now who are getting their comeuppance. You know what I mean? There's certain people in some institutions who are, even though they towed the line, was being social accommodationists, they still got their comeuppance as Africans. They still was, either fired or blasphemed or had their name besmirched. And I can go into the names. You know what I mean? There's a couple of people that come to mind. They haven't just happened very recently, up in Philadelphia, Temple, and a couple other places. But however, things are different now. We have to be separatists. We have to think in the militant fashion, not necessarily think we had to pick up arms and rifles and guns and everything else to do that. Thinking militantly is not accepting the constant barrage of oppressive and blatant disrespect that we receive from the ruling elite. So I will leave it there, folks. It was a little bit different. I got a little bit, wordy, but I think it was important for me to highlight this great man, Nathan Hare, and I will see you guys on the next installment of Notes from the Art of Leadership. Peace. Abibifahodie.